So let's jump over to another image here. We have this one. So basically, this is just some fabric laying on top of a subject. I can't show you the rest of the image because it would become sort of a NC-17 kind of tutorial, and we don't really want to do that. So basically, I've just kind of cropped out a portion of this, but basically just fabric draped on the subject's body. So this is our original, and we have, this fabric that ideally would have been steamed, but unfortunately I didn't have time for that. So, my suffering came in post-processing, where I had to actually sort this out over the entire subject. So this is just a fragment, and unfortunately we had a lot more that we had to sort out. But basically, to deal with something like this, what I tend to do is just do a combination of dodging and burning and healing. So, when it comes to the healing brush, it's good for some things and not great for others. So if we're dealing with something like this, we might create a new layer here, grab our healing brush, and start tackling this. But, we're never going to get to something that really looks perfect. So what I tend to do is address issues of texture with the healing brush. So something like this, what I may do is just, as you can see here, it's not perfect because it's not done. But what I would do, for example, with this is maybe grab a piece of fabric from here, overlay it on top, and that would at least kind of replicate my texture that I want. Similarly with the healing brush, something like this, I can't really dodge this. I mean, if I end up dodging this dramatically to get it to the same luminosity as the surroundings, I'm going to be left with a texture difference because it's just so dark that the texture won't even come through if I try and lighten it. So at a certain point, I have to decide, am I going to heal this out, or am I going to actually dodge and burn it? So my recommendation in a situation like this is to always just kind of use your healing brush to start things off and kind of try to at least get the right texture in there. And once you have the texture, then you can finish things off with dodging and burning. As you can see, this is the thing with a healing brush, that it's kind of finicky. But as long as I have enough kind of luminosity there that the texture shows through, I'm not too worried about it not really blending properly. So something like this, let's just get some better texture in there. There we are. I'm going to just work on this side here, and let's just ignore this because otherwise we're going to be here for a while, and it's not terribly exciting things to watch. So again, we have a texture shift here, so I might actually just use a large healing brush and try and heal that out, and then we can again sort out the actual luminosity issues, which the healing brush doesn't do a great job of addressing. We'll sort those out with dodge and burn. So this is kind of a good starting point. At this point, like everything that's left here, I can pretty much deal with it through dodge and burn. I mean, there's a little bit of a sort of texture shift here, which we may want to somehow sort out. But I'm not too happy with what the healing brush is doing. So let's just leave it and see how we do. We can always kind of go back and do a little bit more healing. So I just got a dodge and burn stack here. We're going to select our dodge layer, and we'll start with that. With something like this, I'll probably start with a flow rate of maybe 4% or 5%. Main reason being that I just want to expedite the process, and I don't have to be super careful here. And I just want it to build up a little bit quicker. So anything that is dark, we're going to sort of lighten it up with the dodge, and then any sort of areas that are too bright, we're going to burn them. And basically what you want to aim for is you want to find a sort of middle ground between them. I don't want to just dodge all of these dark areas to the point where they match this light area, because then I'm kind of taking away from the original contours of the image. So what I want to do is just kind of match a middle ground. And that's why we're not going to get it necessarily perfect, but we're just going to keep going back and forth until it is perfect. So we don't have to get it perfect in one shot. We're going to gradually get there. And again, keep in mind this, this is like a 100% crop of an image that, encompasses an entire body. So even if something's not perfect, like something like this for the texture, I'm not planning on printing this like gallery size at, 48 inches. If I was to, then, yeah, we'd probably try and make it perfect. But that's not going to be the case here. Nobody's going to be looking at this huge. So we don't have to make everything perfect. All right, making some progress here. Now what I think I want to do is just grab my burn layer and just kind of burn in a few of these areas just to help me get to that middle ground, and then fine tune with the dodge later. So we've got some areas here that are too dark, or sorry, too light, and I just want to burn those in. And if it leaves like patches like this, Again, not too concerned because we're going to go back and we're going to do some dodging. And Photoshop does do a good job of kind of reconciling the fact that I've burned it here and then I'm going to dodge over top of that. It's not really degrading your image quality. It does kind of just balance everything out, so don't worry about that. And so, something like fabric is actually pretty good practice for dodging and burning because ultimately, this is kind of what you're doing on skin, but it's just like really pronounced here. And there was some areas on the body that were just, really noticeable, but I can't really show you those areas. So we're just going to stick to this. And again, I'm just going to jump back and forth here because this is now a little bit too light. And back to dodge. And I'm not going to get this perfect because I'm sure you're just crazy bored at this point. And I know that because I've retouched this whole image and I was crazy bored doing it. So I can't imagine watching it being all that more exciting. Okay, so I think that's, gives you a pretty good idea of where we're going with this. So just lightening and darkening. Now keep in mind, obviously this is, again, a black and white image. If it was a color image, I'd probably have a ton of saturation issues because I'm so dramatic in my shifts for light and dark. So again, we'd have to do probably a clipped layer of hue saturation onto here just to kind of polish this all up in the end. But, that's not really a big deal. But of course, with black and white, it's just easier because we avoid all that. And generally areas that you can, dodge to fix them, it's just better than trying to clone, stamp, or heal, because when it comes to things like fabric, the texture is just very hard to match. Like, you saw how many times I had to go back and forth with the healing brush just to kind of get something that aligns well. And so, we don't have to worry about the texture for just dodging and burning it. As long as the texture is visible, we're just going to lighten and darken, and things are just going to flow together. But in areas where the texture is completely off, then, we're going to have to either graft, just cut out a patch, move it over top, and then blend it, or we're just going to use our healing brush and try to replicate it. So that's kind of dependent on the size of the area you're working with. If we had to get rid of this, I probably wouldn't grab a healing brush and try and heal that whole patch. It's easier just to maybe graft, a chunk from here, move it up, graft a chunk from here, move it down, and then use curves to adjust, blend it, and then finish off with dodge and burn to kind of tidy it up. So I'm rambling here because, I'm just trying to keep myself busy and excited while I'm working on this very boring task. But let's just check in on our progress. So this is where we were, and this is where we are. And as you can see, that's kind of cool, even though it's boring as hell. It's kind of cool that you can do that just using, lightening and darkening, essentially. And that's basically what I just kept doing over and over again across my entire subject to get to this point. So that's kind of an extreme example of dodging and burning, and again, a very practical implementation of it. And again, you could see this as sort of corrective dodging and burning because we're not really contouring anything. We're just using it to fix particular issues. So that, in a nutshell, is how we do corrective dodging and burning. And obviously, we're going to revisit some of these concepts as we go through the next two lessons. But I think that gives you a pretty good idea of what's involved. And, some people say, well, you've just given us one example with one image. What happens, when I have a beauty shot or I have this? In essence, it is just the same process over and over again. Working with this fabric is really, I just did the exact same thing as I did with the skin. I look at areas that are too light or too dark, and I either lighten or darken them. And that's really all you're ever doing. With a beauty shot, you may be doing it closer up. We may get to, for example, 100%. And, in beauty shot, we may work on all these tiny little areas. We may try and get them perfect. We may work on these little areas where you have tiny baby hairs. And again, what are we doing? We're going to darken the light baby hairs, and we're going to lighten the gaps in between them. So it's just the same process over and over again, kind of regardless of what you're working on. And, you know, things obviously take a little bit of a twist when we start working with color, because then there is something that we need to do with the color. But we're going to revisit that in our last lesson. But everything else leading up until that color adjustment is the same as what we've done here with this image, with the exception of a few little considerations that you have to make. But for the most part, it's the same process, regardless of what image you're working on and what it is that you're doing. So hope you found that lesson useful, and we're going to see you back in lesson 3, where we're going to contour this thing and look, just make it look amazing. And hopefully we'll be able to look at 2 different images. We'll try and look at a color and a black and white to give you an idea of, you know, how the contouring affects both color and black and white images. So that's it for this lesson, and we'll see you in the next one.